What are some way too early possible starting lineups for Syracuse basketball next season?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome everyone into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and here are some way too early hypothetical starting lineups for Syracuse next season. Tons of possibilities in this transfer portal world, and happy start officially of March Madness. I don't really count the first four, to be completely honest. The round of 64 begins this afternoon. So much content. Syracuse, unfortunately, not in it. And so now we are discussing next season for this team. But still very much interesting. But before we get to all that, this episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. This is the Locked On Syracuse podcast, your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, for Syracuse next season, what are the more realistic starting lineups and what are some way over the top lineups? And as I have right here, the Big-Man Conundrum. We're going to answer all of those questions. All right, let's start. Let's say in a hypothetical world that Judah Mintz returns next season. We still don't know as of now whether he's coming back or not. Any day now, Judah, it would be nice if you can make some sort of announcement. I'm sure at least the Syracuse coaching staff is aware of it, but as of now, we don't. This is going to be more of a cookie cutter lineup. This is probably the most realistic one. Let's just say that Syracuse doesn't bring in anyone really notable in the transfer portal. Here's a lineup that I can see them going out with next year. Judah Mintz, JJ Starling, Chris Bell, Donnie Freeman starting at power forward, and Maliq Brown. So basically in this scenario, Syracuse doesn't bring in a big-time transfer center or big-time transfer big man in general. And so therefore, Donnie Freeman would probably start at the 4 for this team right away, and Maliq Brown would stay at the 5. I wouldn't say this is the worst lineup in the world, especially if Donnie Freeman is as good as advertised. But Maliq Brown at center is not necessarily ideal. I think Maliq Brown's a really good basketball player, but we're going to get to the Big-Man Conundrum later on in the show. He's certainly not a center, not at his size. 6'8", not really a center. However, Donnie Freeman is a freshman. I don't think the best thing for his development, if he's especially in the starting lineup, is to play him out of position. I think there's a time and place for it. Probably not opening night or opening day, whenever they open up. Probably not right then and there. May has stepped ahead a little bit here, but just for a general overview of Syracuse's roster right now, they currently have 11 players under scholarship, and per NCAA rules, they're allowed to have 13. Now, those 11 players include the 2 freshmen in Elijah Moore and Donnie Freeman. So 2 spots to play with as of right now. How do they probably fill that? My guess is, and spoiler alert for Poll Friday, I think it's going to win, which is the biggest need is size and really a true center. They're probably going to have that in there. Probably going to have that. So another possibility with Judah Mintz back in the lineup would be Judah Mintz, JJ Starling, Chris Bell, Maliq Brown, and a transfer center. So under this scenario, Donnie Freeman is now on the bench. He comes off the bench, and Syracuse obviously brings in a transfer center. The best three right now available, and this is like the biggest wish ever. The best one by far, forget the best three, the best one by far, he's the number one player in the portal. He's 7'1" from Stanford, Maxime Reynaud. He was all Pac-12 this season. He's big. He can get rebounds. And what are the two biggest needs for Syracuse? Size. Well, Reynaud is 7'1". I think we got size covered there. He can move too. And the other one they need is shooting. We've discussed at length that those are the two big needs for Syracuse. Maxime Reynaud, last season, shot 36% from the three-point line. Folks, he's 7'1". He shot 36%. Remember how I said after the Clemson game that, a guy like PJ Hall would be a perfect fit for this Syracuse team? Obviously, getting PJ Hall himself, that's just not going to happen. Maxime Reynaud, if this guy is in the starting lineup day one for Syracuse, they're going to make the tournament. That's how good this kid is. He was Pac-12's most improved player. If you have him in the starting lineup next year and Judah Mintz is back, folks, Judah Mintz all of a sudden becomes the second best player in that starting lineup. And that's a good thing. You can never have enough good players. Maxime Reynaud is clearly the number one player available in the transfer portal, let alone centers. He's the number one player on the board. If they can somehow nab him, they would still have an open spot, a still open roster spot. Look out for this Syracuse team. Plenty more lineups to go over. These were more cookie cutter, not too crazy yet. All I'm suggesting is maybe just bringing a transfer center or not and having Maliq Brown stay at the center. Donnie Freeman would start at the power forward position. It's going to get a little bit crazier, though, and we're going to get to the Big-Man Conundrum, because what exactly happens if they bring in a dominant transfer center? Kind of hinted at it a little bit. We're going to answer that next. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Yukon Huskies can only be described as an Armada. This top-seeded team is as hardcore as it gets out there, so it's no wonder they've landed the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. They're one of the favorites to win it all, despite 4 of the 6 Power 6 conference champions standing in their way in the East region. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And with the NCAA tournament coming in just a few hours, think about all of the possibilities that you can bet on. First of all, you got to hope that Syracuse is in this thing next year, especially if they're a high seed and you can bet on them to win the whole thing. But regardless, this season, you can still get in on the action. There's so many thrilling and exciting contests, and you can win big, especially with this deal. I know I'll be cashing in on it, and you should too. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, to Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And for Syracuse, plenty to go over as March Madness is just around the corner. And for us, we're already thinking about next season because we're not in the tournament, unfortunately. But still, we've discussed a couple of lineups with Judah Mintz coming back, if they do bring in a center or they don't bring in a center. Now, what happens if Judah Mintz decides to leave? If Judah Mintz leaves, is it the end of the world for this team? Well, in my grading Judah Mintz video, I think this team could really, really use him unless this team just goes out and gets like the best players otherwise in the transfer portal or in recruiting. We'll get to that in a second. They kind of need him, but if they don't have him, what is the likely outcome for this team? Well, not much would change in terms of the starting lineup, right? You'd still have Starling, Bell, Brown, and a transfer center, or you would have what I discussed earlier, which is Starling, Bell, Freeman, and then Brown. But as far as who could be the point guard, I think you got to look in the Ivy League, and Syracuse has a connection to him, has already reached out apparently, and that is Maliq Mack. He was the Ivy League Rookie of the Year. So if Syracuse were to get him in the transfer portal, he's one of those guys that has many years of eligibility left. And that's important, right? You want to get good players, and you want to get good players with a lot of years left, right? Some of these guys, they're great transfers, but they are just going to be one and done because they don't have any more eligibility. Maliq Mack, you get many years from him. He had 17 points a game last season. Pretty good. But again, that's in the Ivy League. A little bit tougher in the ACC, obviously. More importantly, though, he's a decent three-point shooter. So you are getting an upgrade from Judah Mintz in that regard. Mack was 34% from the three-point line last season. Judah Mintz, less than 30% last year. So perhaps a tiny bit more floor spacing. I think Maliq Mack would certainly be a solid consolation for Judah Mintz. But it's just, as I said, it would be very much ideal to have him in the starting lineup next season. And there are plenty of crazy lineups. I'm going to give you one crazy lineup now, and we'll get to another one after this. This is going to start with the Big-Man Conundrum. If Syracuse brings in a transfer center, Maliq Brown might start next year on the bench. And before you call me crazy, just hear me out for a second. Maliq Brown this season, the first 14 games, he came off the bench. It wasn't until Naheem McLeod got hurt that Maliq Brown became an every game starter. Kind of by necessity, he had to. But just hear me out for a second. He's already said that he's most likely going to stay. So that's out there. If the Syracuse brings in a transfer center, that means Maliq Brown would not have to start, right? You bring in a guy like Maxime Reynaud, and there's other ones out there like Brandon Garrison from Oklahoma State. He would be an awesome get for this team. Cliff Amori from Rutgers, another one who just became available. Those are like the three best transfer centers right now. If you nab one of those guys, there's no excuse not to. You got to throw the kitchen sink at one of them. Maliq Brown will not be the day one center, which means power forward. It means he would start at power forward, except they have Donnie Freeman coming in. a 5-star power forward. And before you sit here and tell me, well, you would obviously start the more experienced player. Actually, I would just start the better one. I would start the better one. I would not be closed-minded to, well, he's a freshman, don't start him. Here's why. Judah Mintz started every game as a freshman, and he was ready. How good are you day one as a freshman? Some players are not. For example, Benny Williams was a top recruit coming to Syracuse. He didn't start day one. You know why he didn't start day one? Because he wasn't that good. He wasn't that good from the start. Now, obviously, he could have developed, but he wasn't that good to start. So he didn't. You remember who led Syracuse to a national championship in 2003? Yeah, you know. Carmelo Anthony was a freshman. Don't be closed-minded. If Donnie Freeman is better than Maliq Brown day one, and Syracuse brings in a transfer center, like one of the three guys that I just mentioned, Reno, Garrison, or Amori, Maliq Brown would be the sixth man next year, and that's not a bad thing. You can never have enough good players. So that is the big man conundrum. The big man conundrum right there. It's a good problem to have. More possible lineups. Trust me, you're going to want to hear the next one right after this. Amazon Fire TV is the place I get the top streaming apps and channels for movies, TV, and for watching Syracuse games for next season and the NCAA tournament, which is coming up in just a few hours. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV Stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, which is here, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we've gone over plenty of possible Syracuse basketball starting lineups for opening night next season. And the next one I'm about to bring you is probably the craziest of them all. So bear with me on it. It's also kind of unrealistic. I don't think it would happen, but it's possible, right? Never say never. And I actually have this in my notes written as holy cow. So here we go. The starting point guard of this lineup would be Judah Mintz. He comes back. You have J.J. Starling starting at the shooting guard. Remember what I said earlier, that there are 2 scholarship spots available on this team right now as I speak. But Connie Ruths, who? Well, he's a freshman, or he's going to be a freshman. He recently decommitted from Michigan. He's a high-end 4-star recruit. and he's high school teammates with Donnie Freeman. So how about that? And Connie Ruth would be the starting small forward on this team next season. And wait, it gets better. Why not pair the teammates together and have them start day one? Donnie Freeman, your starting power forward for next season. And finally, your center is a transfer center. One of the three guys that I have mentioned. Reno, Garrison, Omori. Yeah, I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot, and maybe it's just me dreaming. Maybe it's me just getting my hopes up, hoping that this team is a lot better next season. And I know what you're thinking. Maliq Brown on the bench and Chris Bell on the bench. Here's why this is not only a holy cow lineup, but probably the best case scenario. It's the best case scenario. You have Judah Mintz returning. You get one of the top transfer centers in the portal. And J.J. Starling is solid as a rock at the shooting guard. So you don't have to make changes there. But Maliq Brown and Chris Bell, I have no doubt, can be starters. They have proven they can be starters. Absolutely no doubt. This is nothing. This is no hate to any of those guys. None whatsoever. But you're only allowed to start 5 players on the floor. That's all you can do. And you can never have enough good players. And I understand it's possible that if this were to happen, one or maybe both decide to transfer. But here's the deal. If Ruths and Freeman are better than Bell and Brown, if we have an entire offseason, they come into the Syracuse program, maybe they start. Maybe they start and Bell and Brown come off the bench. The reason why this is such a long shot is because Ruth's just recently decommitted from Michigan. He recently decommitted. So he's not even listed on the Syracuse roster right now. I haven't heard yet where he's going to go. But the connection is that he's high school teammates with Donnie Freeman. And Donnie Freeman is obviously going to Syracuse. So you put the pieces together, you do a little bit of recruiting for your buddy Donnie, and then you get this kid. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a team that not only should be in the tournament next year, but could compete for a national championship. That's how good this lineup can be. Because you got to figure, if you're starting Ruths and Freeman next year, day one, that they are better than what Chris Bell and Maliq Brown are right now. And we know that Chris Bell is good and Maliq Brown is good. Talk about maybe one of the best teams in the ACC, if not the country. That's the craziest lineup I got. If you have any crazier, drop a comment below. Let me know. If you think I'm totally crazy and that I'm just too wishful with my thinking, I gave you my realistic lineups already off the top. I gave them to you. And that's probably the most likely outcome. But if you have Judah Mintz, J.J. Starling, Ruths, Freeman, and one of the top transfer centers in the portal, folks, we're going to make the tournament next year. We're going to go far. And get back to the glory days of this team. Now, tomorrow, of course, there could be more news regarding Syracuse and the transfer portal or potentially high school recruiting. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that. But the plan for tomorrow is to have a wish list. My early wish list for Syracuse basketball next season. What do I want to see? Right? Spoiler alert. They better make the tournament. They better make it. There's no excuse. I don't care how they do it. They got to make it. So that is it for today's episode of Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Enjoy your March Madness, everyone. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when the next podcast is up. Take care, everyone, and go Syracuse, because next year, this team will be in the tournament.